You're like, oh, it's just champagne. And you're like 12 mimosas deep at brunch. You're like just hammered. You're like, oh boy, this really got on top of me here. And be like, oh, looks like the apartment's on fire. That's too bad. Anyways.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our three favorite things: suck a little of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. Ian the Tall Guy with you again for another podcast, and we're brunching it today.
Oh, heck yeah, we are. It's brunch boy season. You know, the summer is just around the corner, and it's time to get those sundresses out, get out the khaki shorts, because it's brunch season.
Yep, we are brunching it today, and we are excited. And we're going to talk about a really cool topic in the NBA today. We're going to talk the play-in tournament. It's the time of the year where the play-in tournament or like the playoff push is happening. Teams are jostling for position, and no year is it more important than this year, because it's not just 1 through 8 that make the playoffs. It's 1 through 10, and that makes a whole another level of just intricacies and seeding battles and all sorts of fun stuff for NBA fans to watch.
Absolutely. It makes the end of the playoff race much more interesting, and it's, to me, a lot more interesting now, especially like the tops of the both conferences kind of just look the way they look. But now, going into the end of the season, these bottom parts is really going to be some of the more compelling storylines. But before we get into that, I think that we should talk about our drink of the day. Our drink of the day is, barring that it's the morning time, I did not want to drink a whiskey on a Wednesday morning, so we are drinking mimosas today.
Yep, it's the brunch drinks of brunch drinks.
Oh, yes, it is the brunch cocktail. And there is actually some interesting history to the mimosa. Would you like to hear about it, E?
Absolutely.
All right, so this comes from chilledmagazine.com. It says here that the champagne and orange mixture has been known to have different origins. In 1921, at Buck's Club in London, the Buck's Fizz was invented. It was made up of champagne and orange juice, like the mimosa, but it had a lot more of the champagne in it than orange juice. A mimosa contains equal parts orange juice and champagne, and it's believed that a bartender in 1925 at the Ritz Hotel in Paris created the mimosa. But there's another account that says the famous director, Alfred Hitchcock, invented the beloved drink in San Francisco in the 1940s. The Oxford Companion to American Food and Drink claims that Hitchcock was the one to popularize the mimosa and make it the brunch drink in America.
What?
Alfred Hitchcock, man.
No way.
Yeah. Way back.
I did not see that coming at all.
It's like, oh, kind of a normal story. Random bartender in France. This seems French. I can believe that. Mimosa. Well, yeah, why not? And then it's like, Alfred Hitchcock made the mimosa. Okay.
In the 1940s, which seems late to me. It seems like the mimosa should be around longer than that, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, it feels like orange juice and champagne is could have been a thing in the 1800s, long time ago.
But my hat's off to you, Alfred. My hat's off to
Alfred,
you.
well done.
Well done. Thank you.
Making Sunday brunch fun for everyone for years to come.
Bottomless mimosas are dangerous.
And we can thank our old Mr. Hitchcock for that.
Yeah.
I love going into the history of some of these drinks, whether it's just like an individual distillery or an individual whiskey or like just a generic drink like the mimosa. There's so much history with all of these, and they're all very unique backstories. And it's just it's so fun for me to go in and actually learn about all these things, because I would never sit there and just, what is the history of the mimosa?
Yeah, when we hang out with friends, Mitch is kind of the encyclopedia now. People will just come up to him and be like, hey, so what's this? Tell me about this whiskey that I just got, or tell me about this drink that I'm ordering. And Mitch will be like,
oh, I know the
hold on, but before I did to one of these.
So yeah, it's been really fun, and even just with the mimosa like this, it's not the biggest backstory, but it's so interesting. Maybe Alfred Hitchcock had a huge thing to do with the popularization of the mimosa in America, because it is one of the most popular drinks throughout the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, anytime you go to a brunch, mimosas are flowing. You get the little crafts of them or whatever, but everyone loves, no one doesn't like mimosas.
Exactly. It's just such a nice, refreshing drink. It's kind of like you're just drinking orange juice out of a nice glass, but then after 6 of them, you just feeling a little different.
All right, well, let's get into these conference tournament type things that we're doing. The NBA is expanding the playoffs. Mitch, let's break down exactly what the play-in tournament is this year, because it's a little different than how it went last year.
Yeah, so when they brought in this play-in tournament for the bubble, It was originally just the 8 and the 9 seed, and it was a a best of 2 games, which pretty much means that the team who is the 8 seed, all they had to do was win one of 2 games, and they were to advance and stay as the 8 seed. If the 9 seed was to win both games, win 2 in a row and not lose one, then they would take over the 8 seed. It's going to be a little bit different this year. The way that they've set it up this year is that it's 7 through 10. All of them are going to be in a play-in game. And I, like a lot of people, originally thought that it was going to go a lot like last year's bubble and how their playing game went. I thought it was going to be 7 versus 10 and 8 versus 9, best of 2 series again. That's not how they're doing it.
It's almost like a little tournament.
Yes. It's almost like a little bit of a round-robin tournament sort of thing. So 7 and 8 are going to play each other. 8 and 9 are going to play each other. The loser of the 7 and 8 matchup is going to play against the winner of the 9-10 matchup. The winner of that game between the 8-9 winner and the 7-8 loser, whoever wins that game gets possession of the 8 seed. So you could be the 7 seed, lose 2 games, you could lose 2 games in a row, go in a little slump, lose 2 games because they're going to be good teams that are there at the bottom right now, and be totally out of the playoffs.
That's wild.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it is. It is kind of weird. It takes a little bit of getting used to. As a fan, I think it's kind of really interesting. It makes the playoff race a lot more intriguing. It makes a lot more kind of drama towards the end of the year. But I can also see the frustration if you are that 7 seed and you've earned that 7 seed, you lose 2 games and you're out. Like that's because it's kind of come under fire from both ends.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely has. I just as the impartial bystander, I think that it's going to be so much fun. I think that it adds it's such a compelling thing that the NBA has brought in to add more storylines and bring more drama into the bottom part of the playoffs. Now all of a sudden, being the 6th seed and being the 7th seed is a huge difference.
It's a monumental difference, and a lot of teams are currently duking it out for that type of seeding benefits. You don't have to play in that tournament. You don't have to worry about, you lose 2 games, you're done. It's also it adds a reason to play 2 teams that are in years
near
past out of the playoff race, because now you're not fighting for 8, you're fighting for 10, because you could be the 10 seed, win 2 games, you're now in it. And
also there's something to be said about getting momentum going into the playoffs as an 8 seed. Is let's say you come in and you're the 10 seed, you win that game. But let's say you play against the 7-8 seed, you win that game. You're now you're a hot team that's beaten 2 good teams in a row. You're confident, and you're going into it's like with the Blazers last year, they won the play-in game, and then they went to play the Lakers, and they won game 1 against the Lakers. And so that that kind of thing can happen where it's you have the momentum. Even in the NCAA tournament, they started doing the 11 seed, winner of the 11 seed. The winner of the 11 seed game now plays the 6 seed, and they have been winning over 50% of the time because they have that little 1-game momentum being in the tournament. So I could see this being a good thing for teams on the latter side of it too.
The other flip side of the coin, and it's just something that not a lot of people are talking about, if you're the 1-2 seed, you don't know who you're playing until the last second, which is kind of a disadvantage. It's kind of hard to, because if you're the 3, 4, 5, 6, you know who you're going to play. You know who you're going up against. If you're the, the 1-2 seed, you're kind of I don't know who we're playing. We got to kind of get ready for everybody, which is a little bit of a disadvantage, but also, again, it makes it so much more fun as a fan.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I wonder, so the winner of the 7-8 seed gets the 7 seed. So if you're the 8 seed, and if you win, you get the 7 seed. Let's say in another world where the Lakers only slip to 2, do you kind of want to lose that game? Would you rather play the Jazz in the first round? It's I'm willing to lose this 7-8 game and try to win the 9-10. And it's you're playing a dangerous game. It's well, I have no interest in playing the Lakers in the first round, and we can guarantee ourselves to play against the Jazz or whatever.
Yeah, it adds a whole nother level. And again, as a fan, I love it. I think it's going to be so interesting and so fun, but I can definitely see, as our neighbor's dog is going
neighbor's dog is yelling at us. He doesn't like the play-in tournament very much.
But I can see how coaches and players can have some issue with it, because it adds a whole nother level of just unknown to it that, you get used to doing what you do, but it also adds a whole nother, thing to play for. It impacts so many things. It impacts the playoffs. It impacts, draft. like teams that are normally tanking now are still fighting, and like the Wizards are a prime example that they were down and out, and now all of a sudden they're fighting and they're trying to get to that 10 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the most fun part about this play-in tournament and like the style that they're going for. Now let's kind of jump into the teams in the Western Conference and who is actually fighting for these positions right now.
Okay, so looking down as of right now, which is, today, you guys are hearing this today. So right now, the Blazers are 7. The Grizzlies are 8 with a game and a half back of the Blazers. The Spurs are 9 that are tied with the Grizzlies, but Grizzlies have tiebreaker. And then the Warriors are 10, which is a game back of the Spurs. So kind of breaking this down, the Mavericks are 6, a game ahead. So they're locked. They're not locked into the 6, but they're at 6 alone right now. The Blazers are fighting with the Mavericks for that 6 spot, but are a game behind. And then the Grizzlies and Spurs are tied at 8-9. And then the Warriors are at 10 with a game back of the Grizzlies and the Spurs. And if you're watching on our YouTube, we'll put up a graphic that makes this make sense.
Yeah, and so you got the Mavericks sitting at 6, Blazers 7, Grizzlies 8, Spurs 9, Warriors 10. As of right now, the way that it would shape up is the Warriors and the Spurs would be playing each other. The Blazers and the Grizzlies would be playing each other. Loser of Blazers-Grizzlies would play the winner of Spurs-Warriors, and then the winner of that game, that third game, gets the 8 spot. And so that's just why it's like the Blazers were fighting for the 4 seed a second ago, and then they go on a major slump here in the last month, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, man, we're kind of just buckling up to playing these playing games, and hopefully we just make it through that. But it makes it all this is so much more interesting now because you really don't want to be in these playing games. Like, I really want to be in the 6 seed. Like, you want to be sitting in that 6 seed and safe right now.
Yeah, you don't. Especially the thing that scares me the most are the Warriors at 10. Because you do not want to play Steph Curry in a winner-take-all game. You don't. And so that's the scariest thing about all this is the Warriors being 10. Like, I think the Blazers, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, and the Spurs are all thinking, like, I don't know if we can beat the Warriors and Steph Curry in a one-game winner-take-all situation. And so, like, you're sitting there just hoping and fighting and clawing and scratching to get to that 6 seed. So you don't have to worry about it, and you can play who's currently in the 3 seed right now, the Clippers.
Yeah, and so there's a lot going on with all of these teams. And also, I want to throw out there that the Lakers are 5th, and they are only 3 games ahead of being in the play-in game. I know that they just got Anthony Davis back. I know that they're more likely than not going to slip like that, but they are still in that area with all these other teams where it's like, if you have a horrible last week of the season and you just start slipping and you lose 4 or 5 games in a row, and then some of these other teams start winning 4 or 5 games in a row, you could find yourself as like the Lakers in a play-in game. So that's really interesting.
On the flip side, the Pelicans are at 11, and they are about, 3.5 games out. So they're also like, and the Pelicans still have 3 games against the Warriors.
Which is massive.
So like, there's a lot, the intrigue here is incredible. The storylines are infinite.
Yeah. Part of me kind of wants the Pelicans to like win all 3 of those games against the Warriors, because then that makes it so they're only half a game outside of the Warriors, and then they own the tiebreaker, so they would be that 10 seed. There's a lot of intrigue going on with all of this stuff. Just kind of breaking it down team by team. The Mavericks, they struggled hard early on, right? Then they recently have really been picking up their play, and then they kind of fell back down to earth a little bit. So the Mavericks are now sitting at 6. If the Mavericks tie with the Blazers, have the same record, the Blazers have the tiebreaker, right?
Yeah, tiebreakers are huge. And in the Western Conference this year, in condensed schedule, every team played every other team in the West 3 times. So basically, whoever won 2 of the 3 has the tiebreaker. And in the Blazers case, the Mavericks won 1, the Blazers won 2.
Yes. So the Blazers will own the tiebreaker over the Mavericks. But the Blazers just lost 2 games to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies now have the tiebreaker over the Trailblazers.
Which they play tonight. So if you want to watch a very important game with a lot of, implications for playoff standings, Grizzlies-Blazers tonight is a huge game.
It is a huge game. But also, on like the other hand, like the way they have this set up, it doesn't matter if you're 7 or 8. Like,
does one team not get home court?
I mean, you probably get home court. You probably get home court. That is an advantage to having 7 over 8. That being said, like, it's not that much of home court this year.
Yeah.
So years going forward when they're doing this, yes, obviously having the home court, that is the big advantage of being 7-8. But overall, you could be the 7 seed and be 10 games over whatever the 8 seed is, and you still got to go out there and win that one game.
Yeah. And that is,
because anyone can win one game.
That is, you always got to strap them up and play, and that's why it's so much craziness into it. Continuing down the list, the Blazers were playing really well to start the year, had some injury issues, and then kind of just fell apart in the last week.
Yeah, it's weird how when you get healthy and then you got worse, that's not a great sign. Like, it was like CJ was down for a lot of the year. Nurk was down for a lot of the year. They ended up doing the trade of Rodney Hood and Gary, and they got Norman Powell. People were really excited about that. Powell was actually playing pretty well. And then they got all of the pieces back together and
went on a 5-game losing streak.
Went on a 5-game losing streak. I mean, the guys are 3-7 in their last 10, and that's after one big blowout game. They were 2-8 before last night. So the Blazers have been struggling hard over the last month or so. Really ruined like any chance that Dame wanted to have first team All NBA or MVP. Really ruined any chances the Blazers wanted to have like a home court advantage in the first round, and just totally fell apart. And now here you are sitting at 7, fighting for a playoff seat, fighting to be in the first part of the playing game at this point.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part is like you can have one bad week, and with this format, tumble. Continuing down the list, the Grizzlies have been super unlucky when it came to injuries this year, but are finally starting to get healthy, and it's making them dangerous.
Yeah, the Grizzlies have this team of really a bunch of like nobody kind of names. A bunch of guys that your casual NBA fan is not really going to know. Like, you'll know Ja and you might know Jaren, but you're not going to know who Xavier Tillman. You're not going to know about Desmond Bane. You're not going to know about
Kyle Anderson.
Kyle Anderson's having a phenomenal season, by the way.
Dylan Brooks.
Jonas
Valanciunas.
Yes, a bunch of like middle tier guys, right? But all of them play really hard. They all play really good defense. They all can shoot. They all can create just a little bit. Like, they all fill a very specific role. This is like a well-built basketball team.
It's a well-rounded roster, and it's filled with guys that know their role. It's similar and different. Their play style is different, but it's very similar to the Grizzlies teams of old, where it's just like you have like a couple of guys that are just nose to the grindstone, blue-collar guys, and then you have a bunch of role players that just fit their roles so well and buy into their roles, and the team together plays really well, and they don't play any bad basketball players. There's no like singular huge holes on their roster.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where the Grizzlies are like the epitome of like the team. It's like, we don't play anyone that sucks. Everyone that we play is at least like good. And they're kind of like, like the new age Grizzlies, because they are super intense on defense. Like, that's where their calling card is, but they shoot a ton of threes. And they make a ton of threes. Grayson Allen is one of the better three-point shooters in the entire NBA right now. So is DeAnthony Melton. I think leads the entire NBA in three-point percentage at 45%. So the Grizzlies are a very dangerous team. They're on the come-up. They've only had Jaren Jackson back for, I think, 4 to 5 games, and he's still kind of like minutes restriction coming off the bench right now.
So come play-in tournament time,
scary.
He's going to be ready to go, and he's one of the best defenders in the league and one of the best three-point shooters in the league.
Yeah, he is absolutely frightening. So, as a Mavericks fan or as a Blazers fan, right now we are the two teams that's looking like we're going to be playing against the Grizzlies in this first playing game, and I don't love the idea of playing the Grizzlies in the first game. They're youthful, they're energetic, they have a ton of talent. They fill all of the holes that you want in basketball, as far as like they can defend, they can shoot threes, they can rebound. They have a star basketball player in Ja Morant that can go out and get you 35 on a given night.
And a viable number 2 in Jonas Valanciunas. Like, that guy cannot be understated. He is an absolute monster.
Yeah. He is one of the more underrated players. I think we've said this before, but he is one of the more underrated players in the entire league at this point. So enough about the Grizzlies. I'm going to move down to the next one. The San Antonio Spurs.
How?
They're not going away.
How?
You guys were supposed to...
You're supposed to suck this year. Why?
Stop being good.
Stop it.
The San Antonio Spurs are probably the least talked about team of all of these teams in the entire Western Conference. Go down to the Pelicans, and people will still talk about the Pelicans more than they're talking about the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs, they're just the model of consistency.
I read something the other time. They are the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NBA. They're just never bad. Everyone wants them to be bad, and they're just never bad.
I mean, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different guys on their team that average over 10 points a game.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So they're just like
A model of just
it's pop.
team.
It's pop.
It's just team basketball.
Yeah.
And they move the ball well. They have their superstar in
DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan. They have a great piece fitting next to him with DeJounte Murray. They have a really good guard play. Their bigs rotation is unheard of, but still good. Jakob Poeltl's playing really well for them. I mean, they just play super well. They're playing DeMar at kind of like the 4, which is weird in today's NBA because 3 years ago he was playing shooting guard and now he's playing power forward, but he's playing really well in that spot. He's decimating other bigs because the way their lineup set up is like you almost have to throw like a bigger guy at DeRozan. And he is just ripping people to shreds.
Yeah, if you play big against the Spurs,
Good luck.
like they're going to hit you with DeRozan and like in isolation against whoever big that you have guarding him, which is always going to be an issue. They really only have like one genuine big that they actually play, and that's Jakob Poeltl. And outside of that, they're a pretty small team. But that just goes to show in today's NBA, you don't have to be gigantic to be at least making the playoffs and good. You might need really good big guys if you want to compete for a championship. We're talking about playing against the Anthony Davises, the Jokic's, the Embiid's, the Giannis's, the Gobert's. But if you want to be a team, like they're 7-3 in their last 10. They have, granted, they played a lot of the easier teams. They went on Eastern Conference trip. They played like the Pistons and like some of the lower teams over there, like Piston Cavs and stuff like that. So but they still are just like, they're winning. They're in the Western Conference. They're playing all the same teams that we're playing. And they managed a way to pull out these games because they have a lot of youth. They do have the veteran leadership in DeMar DeRozan. Rudy Gay is still on that team. He still can pop off on any given night. They got a lot of different weapons. And they're just like, the team is like, you have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. They're just going to be very solid.
They're a Pops team where they're not going to make those game-altering, game-losing mistakes. They're going to be fine. They're going to play their basketball. You have to go out and have a good night. You can't go out and underestimate them or have like a bad shooting night because you will lose. And that's the scary part about playing them in a winner-take-all game is like they're not going to mess up. They're not. They're going to play the way Pop tells them to. They're going to play their game. You have to go and beat them. You have a rough shooting night, you're done.
Yeah. And because they're going to get the shots they want. They're going to they take a lot of really just good shots. Because when it gets to the end of the clock, DeRozan is the king of, I can just take any mid-range and it really doesn't matter what it looks like or how I get there. Like, I still got a pretty good chance of going in. He's one of the greatest mid-range shooters that the NBA's ever had.
Trust me, he made me sad a couple of weeks ago. A buzzer beater from the mid-range, hand in his face, terrible shot, but it went in. And that's you know what? That's DeRozan though. Yeah. That's DeRozan.
And that's what kind of the role that he plays on that team is when it comes to the end of the shot clock, it's just, okay, give it to DeRozan. He'll go and do his thing.
Out of the way.
But until then, they, just like, your Popovich teams do, great ball movement, great movement off the ball. Everyone shares the ball. There's not like a single guy. It's like, okay, like, it's not like having Luka or Dame on your team where it's like, just give him the ball and everyone get out of the way. It's very much like team play. And let's just find whoever the open guy is. Like, I'm happy with Keldon Johnson shooting a 3, just as I'm happy with Patty Mills shooting a 3, just as I'm happy with Derek White shooting a 3. You got a lot of guys that just play really good team ball with the Spurs.
Yeah, the ball doesn't get sticky with them. But let's move on to, in my opinion, the scariest team in the play-in tournament. And that is because they have one man, his name is Steph Curry. And that guy can just do things that no one in the world can with a basketball.
It's true. I mean, he's got to be one of the most fun players to ever watch play basketball. Like,
fun and aggravating because you're sitting there and you're like, great defense, great defense. What? No.
What is that?
How? Why?
Yeah, I think in a one-game series, the Warriors have got to be the scariest team just because Steph has the popability, more popability than probably anyone in the entire NBA at this point.
And he's been there. He's been to so many big games. He's been in so many big moments. He's been in so many, winner-take-all situations, and he's clutched up time after time.
And the roster still isn't terrible in Golden State. Their bench is bad.
They're not. He's probably got the worst supporting cast of anybody on this list, but also he's probably the best player of anybody on this list.
Yeah, that is probably true, and it's going to come down to how much is their bench going to hurt them. Like, do you just play Steph 40 minutes? Because I could see Steve Kerr doing that. It's like, Steph, go out and just have a day. Just have a day. Like, do you just go crazy? We're just going to tell Draymond to go lock up whoever the number one guy's like, okay, Draymond, go lock up DeRozan tonight. Or like, hey, Draymond, go lock up Dame tonight. Or go lock up like Jaren Jackson tonight. And then Steph, just go crazy. And that just those two guys being on the floor is going to be enough to potentially win you a game every single night.
Yeah, and I'm saying all this after the Mavericks beat them by like 40,
like a million last night.
But that shows me nothing because I've seen Steph and I've seen Draymond both turn it on and just flip a switch, and all of a sudden, like, we were up 30 in like the third quarter, and I'm still sitting there uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like, Steph went on a little bit of a run in the third quarter. He made like 3 straight threes. I'm like, all right, we're screwed. We're screwed. And he's like, we're still up like 21 points. I'm like, nope,
it's happening.
Nope, here it comes. I've seen this too many times. It's over.
I do wonder if the Warriors have any sense of like a lack of urgency and almost just like a not caring about being in the playing game. It's like, we're above this. It's like, we shouldn't be in this game. It's like, whatever. And like, kind of like mail it in a little bit. It's like, let's just start our summer early. Like, do we really want to go play against the Jazz in the first round? Like, I could see like that, like Steph and Draymond both being like, look, next year's obviously the year when we're bringing back Clay. And then we have these assets to move with Wiggins and Wiseman. Maybe we make another draft pick, whatever. But like, I could see the Warriors kind of being like, this is beneath us.
That's not what Steve Kerr stands for. And I would be very, very, very surprised if that were the case, that Steve Kerr let that happen. I can see them, losing, but I can see them losing in a tough game where they might get blown out, but it's because they're just not hitting their three. This team lives and dies by the three. Mm-hmm. And last night they weren't hitting their threes and they got blown out, So if they're going to lose, it's going to be because they shot, 25% from three on a given night.
Yeah.
Not because they didn't try. Because, Draymond's too prideful. Steph has been there and done that and knows how his legacy is kind of not on the line, but like Steph's legacy is he's going to go down as one of the greatest point guards of all time, but he needs to prove that he can win on his own.
Right now, he's going through those same years that Kobe went through post Shaq, where it was like him and Smush Parker out there giving it their all. That's what Steph is going through right now, is like the burden of being the sole guy on a team with kind of a bunch of like bum players on your roster. And it's like, we're not just going to be a championship team this year. Oh, we're going to have to like work for it. So I'm with you. I do think that, I don't think that they're going to just mail it in, but I think it's interesting to think about that they probably do think that they're above whatever they've been playing this entire season. Like, they probably assume like, look, we're better than this. And like, I'm not going to try to go out and get injured doing that. But I agree. I don't think that that's Steve Kerr's motto at all. I think he's going to like, hey, we got to go out there and we got to like work hard.
If we want to talk about the Pelicans, we kind of can. They're kind of in it. They're still a long ways out. But the big thing about the Pelicans is they've got 3 games left against the Warriors. And that is the biggest thing for them, is they need to sweep the Warriors in order to have a chance.
Yeah, Pelicans been playing really well. Zion obviously balling out. They have a good roster. Like, no one's debating like, oh, like they're lacking talent.
The roster is full of good players. It's just good players that don't, in my opinion, fit.
Yeah.
The roster was literally like a 2K, throw together best overalls and let's see what we can do here, as opposed to let's see, they're the opposite of the Grizzlies, where the Grizzlies are full of guys that are like, lower overalls, but know their role and do their thing. Whereas like the Pelicans were just like 2K, let me get a bunch of, best overalls that I can, slap them on a roster and see what can happen.
And let's see how it works out, sort of thing. It's kind of like what Philly did a couple of years back when they signed Al Horford and Tobias with a team that already had Ben Simmons and Embiid is like, oh, well, these are all good players. Of course they can play together. Doesn't always work out that way.
No.
So it's going to like the Pelicans are in very interesting waters. If they can really just turn on the Jets here at the very end, the Warriors are showing that they're slipping a little bit. Last night was a real rough game for the Warriors, and you get the chance to play them 3 times in a row. If you catch the Warriors slipping, that's 3 straight games like directly in one night that you get back on the Warriors, and you can win the tiebreaker over them.
So I think we said this earlier, but right now the Pelicans are 3.5 games behind the Warriors. The Pelicans win those 3 games against the Warriors, they're a half game out with tiebreaker.
Yeah. That's
huge.
Yeah, and that's scary if you're the Warriors.
Yeah.
That's really scary. So the Pelicans are absolutely still in this race. It's definitely an uphill climb for them, but they are for sure in this race depending on how those games against the Warriors go.
It is crazy the difference. I'm kind of looking at the difference between the West and the East here, and we'll get into the East in a minute here, but the Warriors are 500, 31-31, and they're in the 10 seed. Can you guess the record of the 10 seed in the East?
I'm going to guess 4 to 5 games under 500.
27-34. 7 games below 500 is the 10 seed. So 500 gets you the 10 seed in the West. 7 games below gets you the 10 seed in the East. If they were 500, they would be the 8 seed.
The Kings would be in the 10 seed right now in the East.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, the East and the West is just
the difference is wild.
It is. It really is a wild difference between the two.
But if we're going to get into that, we might as well just have a whole podcast. Let's take another break here. Let's revisit our mimosas that we're having because we're still brunch. It's brunch season. We're still brunching it up.
Brunch season. Oh yeah. Look, mimosa. So I will say, mimosa is not my number one brunch drink. I love a good Bloody Mary. I love me a good Bloody Mary. That being said, there's something so like nice and like light and crisp when it comes to having the mimosa.
We were talking about it off mic, but it's very much like I'm on vacation or I'm like, it's the weekend type of drink. Like I had a sip and I was like, it's not Wednesday.
Yeah, it's definitely not a Wednesday morning where I have to go work later today. Like it just doesn't feel like that. It does. It makes you feel a little vacation-y, makes you feel like definitely like weekend vibes. And it's always nice. It's always nice on the weekends to go hit up brunch and then you get the bottomless mimosas and you just see how far down the bottom you can get.
I've seen videos online of people that fill their glass like completely full of champagne and take like a little dropper and just drop like a drop of orange, just like mimosa, bam,
boom. This is a mimosa. This is not a glass of champagne. There is orange juice in here. For me, there's not a lot to say. Mimosas are really good. You can. It doesn't matter to me if I have the top of the line champagne or the bottom of the barrel champagne. Add it with the orange juice, and it's always going to be pretty nice.
Yeah. I'm not a big champagne drinker, so I don't know the difference between like really expensive and really non-expensive champagne.
One's really good, and one is a little harsher.
What I do know is you throw them with some orange juice, and they all taste the same.
Yeah. It's very true. Orange juice is also like a very overpowering flavor by itself.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense when you put something a little lighter and crisper like the champagne in it that it just kind of just feels like I'm drinking orange juice.
That's
honestly.
what I was going to say. You could have it 3/4 champagne and 1/4 orange juice and it'll still taste like you're just drinking a glass of orange juice.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so dangerous but also so fun.
Yeah, exactly. So cheers to the brunch season being here, and I say we go ahead and move on. Let's start talking about the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely. The East, man, it is a whole different ball game.
It's a different world that they're living in over there.
That is just, it's crazy. I mean, you could be well below 500 and be in the playoffs.
Yeah, you really can. So the West kind of has like their top 4 guys, and then the Lakers, and then a bunch of teams that are all competing to be in that play-in game that we were talking about before. The East has their top 3 teams in the Nets, the Sixers, and the Bucks, and they like are locked into the top 3. There could be a little jostling. Nets are now number 1. Sixers are 1.5 games behind them.
But they're jostling between those 3. But there's no way 4 can get to 3.
Yes, exactly. Now we have the 4 seed through the 8 seed is only a 3.5 game difference. And then from the 8 seed to the 12 seed is only like a 4.5 game difference. So I'm going to break it down team by team, just who we're looking at right now. The Knicks are 4, and they're
tied with the Hawks.
Yes, they're tied with the Hawks, who are 5. The Celtics are 2 games back of both of those at 6, and they are tied with the Heat at 7, both of them 2 games back of the Knicks and the Hawks. The Hornets at 8 are a game and a half back from the Celtics and the Heat. Then you have the Pacers, who are 1 game back of the Hornets. The Wizards, who are 2 games back of the Pacers.
At 10.
At 10. And then the 2 teams that are trying to burst their way into the play-in game is the Chicago Bulls, who are 1 game back from the 10-seed Wizards, and the Raptors, who are 1.5 games back from the 10-seed Wizards. So a lot of jostling around in a lot of different positions here.
A lot of teams fighting for a spot, and the reason there's so many teams fighting for a spot is because the bar is so much lower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, every single one of these teams, 4 through 10, all lost their last game.
At least. There are a couple that have lost more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the Eastern Conference is definitely, it's more of a try to stay afloat, where the West is like you got to pound everyone and you need to look good every single game, and unless if you don't look good, then you're losing your spot. The East is like just stay afloat. If you can just stay afloat and stay 500 and like win as many games as you lose, you're gonna be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's crazy the difference, but also like it kind of makes it way more fun too, because again, there's so many teams on this list that like could make it, and honestly, anybody can beat anybody. I think the Wizards, who are 10, could beat the Knicks in a game.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas, like, I don't know if you could say that for the 10 versus the 4 in the West. I mean,
no.
maybe like because it's the Warriors, but I don't know if you could say the Grizzlies could beat the 4 seed.
The Nuggets
West.
right now.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the opposite. Like the Grizzlies might be able to compete with them because the Grizzlies are so good. But for it's like oh, the Knicks, like the Wizards could compete with the Knicks because both of them kind of could just falter at any given point. You know what I mean?
So
going down the list here, the New York Knicks are 9-1.
They're good
in
again.
their last 10.
The Knicks are back.
The Knicks are back. And yeah, there now is going to be, I can guarantee you can be a lot more chatter of superstars wanting to go to New York, because just like Brooklyn, all you had to do was have a good culture, a good coach, looks like you're going in a good direction, and be in New York, and then you can sell that. And like Leon Rose, I think is going to be a great GM for them. All you got to do is sell that to one star and be like, you already have Julius Randle. You already have...
Who's an all-NBA type of guy this year.
Yes, he'd probably be second or third team All-NBA. Yeah. I think third team.
I would say third team as well, but also like a guy who is kind of a write-off. Like when he went to the Knicks, I was like,
yeah,
he's going to be on the Knicks. Congrats. You got Julius Randle.
Dude, it's funny. People like forget that he averaged 21-9 like 2 years ago with the Pelicans. But because it was with the bad Pelicans team, it was like, oh, Julius Randle's nothing more than an empty calorie guy.
Yeah.
Like he'll get big stats on bad teams. And now he's showing, he's like, no, I can get big stats on good teams. And really, I mean, the Knicks have a lot of the look of like what the Suns did last year, where it's like you got a lot of good young talent. You got a really good coach. You're really just like one star away. So I could see one guy who's a superstar. I don't know who it is. Could be anything from Kawhi to Dame to Giannis to whoever wants to move and like wants to force that, like, because you could force your way out with a trade at this point in the NBA.
Yeah.
So it could be any star, but the Knicks, their future looks very bright right now.
Yeah. If you're a Knicks fan, you have every right to be excited, and good, because you've earned it, because you were bad for a long, long time. Moving down to the Hawks, this was a team that you and I, if you remember correctly, had a whiskey bet on.
I do remember this.
I bet them that they would be higher than the 8th seed, and they are currently higher than the 8th seed.
They are higher than the 8th seed, but they could still slip.
They could still slip. They are only, 3.5 games falling back to 8?
They spent most of the season being right around that 8 seed. Like they were kind of floating between 6 and 10 for a majority of the season. And then they have been playing really well as of late, actually. They're 7-3 in their last 10. And they're starting to hit their stride. I can tell that when they switched from Lloyd Pierce to Nate McMillan, it was just that culture shift that they needed, where I think that they started focusing on defense and they started focusing on ball movement a lot more. It was a lot less of like, oh, we're just going to stand around and wait and see what Trae Young does, and we're going to kind of like improvise from there, to, oh, we have like an actual offense that we're running. We're trying to get Gallo more looks. We're trying to get Bogdanovich more looks. We're trying to get Lou Will more looks. Let's like, and then like really sending out like the good defenders on the other good play on the opposing team's best players, like really blitzing them. So the Hawks have started to develop a new system that works for them.
Save maybe the Nets, this team might have the most firepower in the Eastern Conference offensively.
I mean, potentially on any given night.
So many guys that could go off for 30 and you won't be shocked by it. They have like 5 or 6 guys that could get 30 and you're like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Trae Young, Gallo, Bogdanovich, Lou Will. They have so many guys.
Gallinari, Collins.
Collins could get 30. Like, they have so many guys that could drop 30 on you and you'd be like, I could see that happening. Like that. I'm not shocked by that. And I don't know if there's a team in the NBA with that many guys who could do that, where you're just like, I can see that, not being like, whoa, that guy got 30?
Yeah, exactly. And so we talked about this in the offseason. I thought that they were just going to lack on defense, which is what they were for majority of the year. And now they're really starting to turn the defensive side around, because Nate McMillan has always been a very good defensive coach. That's always been his mindset. But they've never lacked in talent. The offensive ability was always there with the Hawks. And so their battle with the Knicks is going to be really interesting. They're tied right now. Knicks have the tiebreaker, which is why they're sitting at 4. And it's a really big deal, at least for the Knicks. But obviously, both teams want to have home court advantage. But the Knicks are 21-11 at home and 13-17 on the road.
So they definitely want that home court.
They want that home court bad.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure. Moving down the list, probably we get to two teams that are two of the biggest like underperformers of the year so far, which would be the Celtics and the Heat, both tied with 2 games back of the 4 seed. The Celtics having the tiebreak right now, so they're currently 6, which is huge because they're not in the play-in tournament.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the two biggest disappointments in the East, if not the entire NBA, with the Celtics and the Heat. Both of them went into the season, and I think majority of fans and analysts projected that they would be minimum top 4 teams, top 5 teams. Like, it would be like, okay, Bucks, Nets, Sixers, Celtics, Heat was the top 5 on just about everyone's board going into the season. Now the Celtics and the Heat are sitting at 6 and 7, tied with the Celtics having the tiebreaker over the Heat, fighting not to be in that play-in game that we've been talking about. The Celtics they've just been up and down all year. The Heat started off really struggling, then they brought Jimmy Butler back. And so it's just like, for these teams, it's almost like an insult, like a punch in the face that like they even are thinking about playing in this play-in game right now.
Yeah, it's two teams that, one was in the finals, and the other one was probably the biggest up-and-coming. We thought the Celtics were going to be what the 76ers were this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The 76ers came out, punched teams in the mouth, and just showed them how good they are. We thought that was what the Celtics were going to do. But the fact that the Celtics are currently tied with the 7 seed and fighting for that to not be in that play-in tournament, and the Heat fighting to not be in that play-in tournament is, like you said, an insult to both, because both those rosters are very talented. Do you know if those two play again? Are you looking at that right now?
I am. Also, these are the two teams that were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I was going to double check, so I obviously knew that the Heat were, but I was like, I'm pretty sure the Celtics were in the conference finals with them. These were the top 2 teams in the conference last year, and now here they are fighting for 6 and 7. I'll double check.
Right now.
You're looking right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So these two, they're both 10 games back of first place, both sitting at 32 and 30, and I haven't looked at the strength of schedule for either of these teams going forward. That being said, they both have big-time popability. If I was playing in the play-in tournament like the Hornets are, right now they're the 8 seed, I don't know which one of those two I'd rather have, because both of them are incredibly scary teams to play in like a one-game tournament.
Yeah, both teams have definite players that will go off and will definitely backpack them. Both teams have been there before. Both teams' rosters are very well thought out. It's just they just kept dropping games. They just kept left and right losing games that they shouldn't have lost, and they dealt with injuries and guys in and out of the lineup, no lineup continuity, struggles on defense, struggles shooting. It was just struggle boat all day long for both teams. And now they're just sitting there, just again very similar to what the Mavericks and the Blazers are in the West, just fighting, clawing, scratching not to be in that play-in tournament.
So here's something interesting. The Celtics do play the Heat twice. We got 2 games left.
Those will be huge.
Those are massive games. We got one of them is a Sunday matinee at Central Time, 12 p.m. And then the other one is 2 days later. So they have like that baseball series against the Heat, where they're playing the night game against the Heat. And my guess is that probably will find its way on national TV somewhere.
Absolutely, with so much on. I'm looking at the Heat's schedule left, and it doesn't look.
Celtics looks easy.
The Heat
Celtics looks really easy.
They have Spurs, Cavs, Hornets, and then the Mavericks, Timberwolves, and then the huge game Celtics. But then they end it on 76ers, Bucks, Pistons.
See, that's where I think that they're going to lose it, because
they can lose 4 of their last 5 very easily.
Because the Celtics, they've got Hornets, Spurs, Blazers, Magic, Bulls, and then the 2 Heat games. And then they finish the season on Cavs, Timberwolves, Knicks. So I bet those last 3 games, being that the Heat have hard teams and the Celtics have easy teams, well, in the Knicks, like Knicks are playing well, that is going to be the big difference maker. But that little baseball series that they're going to have going into the home stretch is going to be absolutely massive to determine who's going to be in this playing game and who's not.
Yeah, the 6-7 seed in the East is probably the most interesting battle so far. Maybe you can argue the 4-5 seed, but the difference between playing in the play-in tournament and not is massive. And especially if you're the Celtics or the Heat, you get the 6 seed. You're going to play the Bucks, a team which both teams have beaten a playoff series in the last couple of years.
It's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, I find it to be the most compelling storyline, if for no other reason that it's the Heat and the Celtics. They probably have the best group of talent out of anyone 4 through 12 in this Eastern Conference. Like, they have like the top players with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero. Like, it's super compelling to see how this is going to turn out, and how does the play-in game affect these teams going into the tournament too?
Yeah.
Because we're going to see a wide range of people that are playing in these play-in games now.
Absolutely. Moving down the team, the Hornets are the 8 seed right now, a game and a half back of the 7 seed, a game under 500. Now we're getting into the under 500 teams. A team that just kind of did what we thought they were going to do. They definitely upgraded their rosters. Miles Bridges has been on a tear as of late.
He's been awesome. He's scratching the door on 50-40-90. He's gonna come short on free throws, and he's gonna come short a little bit on threes, but he is scratching. He is like knocking on the 50-40-90 door, which is huge for a guy that's like, oh, he's just athletic. It's like, oh no, dude shoots.
Athletic
dude shoots well
and has skill, which is huge. They're getting LaMelo back, which will be big for them. They're getting they have Gordon Hayward playing well. Terry Rozier has had a very, very, very good year. I think the Hornets are a big man away of being like up there with like the 6-7-8 or the 6-7-5 seed in the East.
I'd agree. Biyombo and Zeller are both solid players, but neither of them you really want to have to rely on. And they've been rolling with Vernon Carey a lot lately, who's had spurts of looking really good. But yeah, you're right. They're a big man away. The team it's a little bit all over the place. They got some young talent. They got some old talent. I think they're going forward, we're going to have to figure out what is their identity. What do they want to be going forward? But this has been a good year for the Hornets overall.
Yeah, if you're a Hornets fan, I think you're happy with the progress. And again, you're in the play-in tournament. You're going to be playing either the Celtics or the Heat, and you never know. That's why you suit up and you play the game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, number 9, the Indiana Pacers. Very disappointing season for the Pacers. They've been injured a lot.
A lot of roster turnover, losing, Oladipo and then getting LeVert, but having LeVert have to wait to play. A lot of stuff. Sabonis is out recently.
Turner's out right now.
Miles Turner, who's been playing very well, DPOY candidate, is out recently.
Yeah, Blazers just like kicked their teeth in last night. They pretty much won they're up like 40 until all the scrubs came in. It's been a rough season for the Pacers, especially when you consider there hasn't been a lot of like roster turnover, like outside of the Oladipo trade for LeVert. It's kind of the same team as it was last year when they were competing and playing really well. So it makes you question what their future is going forward. They are the one that seems like they're locked into that play-in tournament. They might slip up to 8 because they're only one game behind the Hornets. But I don't know if I necessarily see them slipping down to 11 because they're a full 3 games ahead of the Bulls, who are at 11.
Yeah, they're playing in the play-in tournament, and the team they're playing most likely to this point will be the Wizards.
Yes, Wizards got that full 1-game advantage over the Chicago Bulls, and they are the Wizards have been turning it up a whole nother notch.
They're a team that they lost their last game, but they were on a 7-8 game win streak before
8-2 in the last 10.
Yep, they've been playing really, really well. And if you're the Wizards, I'm licking my chops to play the Pacers. And then I'm licking my chops again to play either the Hornets or the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
I am this is what the play-in tournament was made to do. This 10 seed if I'm the Wizards, I'm very confident going into this tournament. If I can hold on and figure out a way to get this 10 spot, maybe even win a couple of games, get up to the 9 spot, have home court in that first game, I'm very confident going into this play-in tournament.
Yeah, because the 2 teams that are behind them are both really good teams. I mean, the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors, neither of them are lacking in talent. They're just lacking in the mentality and ability to win games.
I was going to say they're just lacking in the win column.
Yeah, exactly. So they're both good teams. They could catch you. So you got to keep the pedal to the metal if you're the Wizards. But if you do get to that playing game, you struggled all year. You went through so much stuff. You've lost Danny Avdia for the entire season. You missed
Thomas Bryant for the whole year.
You went through a whole ton of COVID issues to start off the season, which made the back half of your schedule even harder with more back-to-backs. But now here you are sitting at 27-34, which if you're in the West, you're not even sniffing the play-in game.
But they have the NBA scoring leader on their team in Bradley Beal, and you have the walking triple-double in Russell Westbrook. In a one-game winner-take-all situation, those two can go off and win you a game, win you 2 games, and then next thing you know, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, the two can combine for 60 to 70 points in a single game, go absolute nuclear, and they can beat anyone, especially when you're talking about anyone being a struggling Pacers team, a Hornets team that's been struggling over the last couple of weeks, and the Heat team that really never figured it out over the course of the season. Like, if I'm the Wizards, I'm like, oh, we are clicking right now, and these teams are... Oh, we can totally take advantage of this.
You are confident.
Yes.
Because those two could literally combine for like 60, 25, and 25.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden you're playing the Nets or the Sixers and you're probably going to lose. But just over the narrative of the entire season of building up to this, struggling so much all year, like does the Beal and like Westbrook thing actually work? And then prove that it does go and then make your way into the playoffs is going to be huge mentally and emotionally for the Wizards.
Yeah, I can see them. Again, if there's a most confident team in the East with their current position that's not locked outside of the play-in tournament, I'm picking the Wizards.
Yeah, I would too.
Honestly, the way that the Celtics and the Heat are playing, it's a coin flip for me if the Wizards were to beat the Pacers and then play, either the Celtics or the Heat.
Or the Heat. Yeah. No, I'd agree because the Celtics and Heat have both just struggled throughout the entirety of the season. They've had hot streaks, they've had cold streaks, but they have never found the consistency where the Wizards are now finding this consistency right now at the perfect time. This play-in tournament has just added a whole new narrative and storyline to the end of the season, and it's so much fun to watch and break down and see, because now we're talking about 5 to 6 new teams that still have a chance. They're still fighting to keep their seasons alive.
And it hasn't officially been approved for next year. Not yet.
Yeah.
They're thinking it's going to. It was unanimous approval for this year. We'll see if it gets approved for next year. It looks like it. But, Mitch, I have a question for you. Play-in tournament, good or bad for the NBA?
I'm going to say good. I can see how there could be some negatives. Maybe a team, but it's going to keep teams from tanking. It's going to keep some of those teams that are close to the playoffs working even harder to try to stay into the playoffs as opposed to just kind of like you saw with the Thunder, they're like, oh, we're just going to pull Shea and we're just going to fade out. You're going to see a lot less of that, and you're going to see a lot more of what the Wizards and the Bulls did, where it's like we bolstered our rosters at the deadline. We're trying to make the playoffs. I think that is going to make the league a lot more competitive, and it's going to be just more fun for us as fans to have something to watch going into the playoffs, because the first round is a bit of a snooze fest for a lot of people, but this play-in tournament is going to be absolute must-watch TV, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a winner-take-all basketball game. It's a Game 7. Mm-hmm. And those are the 2 best words in sports. Game 7. And so it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much more intrigue. There's always a big fight between 1-2, for the best team in the West and the East. There's always a big fight between 4 and 5 for home court. Mm-hmm. Now there's a big fight between 6 and 7. And so it just adds a whole nother, 2 teams punching it out, maybe even 3 teams punching it out. And now there's another big fight between, 10 and 11.
Yeah. You got 6-7 trying to not be in the playing game. You have 8-9 trying to have a chance to lose once instead of having to if you lose once as the 9-10,
double elimination.
Yeah, it's like a double elimination. So you're fighting for that, and you're fighting for the 10 seed just to have the privilege to be in the play-in tournament. So it's 3 more added positions of intrigue just by adding the play-in tournament the style that they've done it.
Yeah, super fun. Very excited. Now is a good time to start watching basketball if you hadn't, because every game matters.
Every single one.
Every single one, and we will catch you up on them next time on our podcast. Very excited to talk, the play-in tournament with you guys today. You guys will be hearing this later today. Shout out to Mimosas for being with us and brunching with us today. What should we drink next on our next pod? Comment with us.
Cheers.
Cheers.